right? But let's be real. We're going to have days where things are not always shiny. What are you going to do? Are you less spiritual that day? Are you less evolved? You're not. You're just being very human. And this is the thing, like we can't spiritually bypass and just do all the actions that denote that we're spiritual or ascended in any way, okay? Wear white, burn sage, go to yoga. Like, they're lovely things. I've done them all. But sometimes they don't bring us any closer to our soul expressions and what's lurking in there. So it's important to do the shadow work, the dark work, the descent work. The really dirty, crawling on the ground, when's this going to end? Winter is long. That kind of work.
Welcome to the Wildflow podcast with me, Charlotte Puanto, certified cycle and feminine embodiment coach and shamanic womb guide. In this podcast, I'll share my wisdom and conversations with powerful change makers, thought leaders, and embodied teachers to invite you to live cyclically in flow with your menstrual cycle instead of fearing it, to heal menstrual shame and normalize womb wisdom and period positivity, and to step into your sovereign magnetic power to create and embody the change you desire to see in your world. Settle in to unleash your wild flow. Before we dive into this week's episode, I want to share some incredibly exciting news with all of you. So, a little while ago, I submitted this podcast into the awards for Best Podcast of the Year in the Beautiful You Coaching Awards. And I just found out recently that Wildflow Podcast is a finalist. And it's just the best news. It's so exciting to have this podcast, this platform, and everything that we're putting out there, recognizing all of the guests and their contributions, all of this wisdom, and the benefits that it's giving to all of our listeners. Just to have all that recognized is so special. I'm so excited, given how much of a journey this podcast has been for me to create. But also just really want to thank all of you for listening, for your support of the podcast, of your encouragement from me personally to do this, to begin this, and then to keep going, for all of our guests. If you're listening and you've been a guest on this podcast, we're just so thankful to you for coming on here, for having authentic, deep, juicy conversations with us, and for offering your wisdom to all of our listeners, because it's so incredible the feedback we've been receiving about how much this podcast is changing your relationship with your body, your cycle, yourself, how it's opening up insight and self-connection and healing and transformation in so many different ways, in terms of how you feel about your body, how you feel about yourself, all parts of you, reclaiming this, losing shame, and coming into a really beautiful, loving, reclaimed relationship. So I'm thrilled, absolutely thrilled. And now we wait till March to see if we have won the award, but truly that recognition is so special just in itself. And I just want to send out huge congratulations as well to the other finalists. So we have all these cycles within us, in our body, and our menstrual cycle, our hormonal daily cycles, our monthly cycles, the lunar cycles, the earth seasons, the cosmic cycles. But what else is there? Katara Sky is my guest today, and she's talking to us about the deeper, unseen cycles of the soul. The soul cycles that carry us through our lived experience in this lifetime, but also journey with us through past lives as well. This is a fascinating conversation about understanding our soul initiation, how some people are never initiated into contact with their soul essence, their soul purpose, and how others might resist this, and how other people can journey really deeply into the descent, which is Katara's favorite part of the soul cycle, the place of transformation and healing. Katara shares with us how we can connect with our current place on our soul journey, how we can support ourselves through this awakening or this descent in this part of the soul journey, how we can relate to our past lives as well, karma and the karmic cycles, embracing all as all being equal and welcome, and how we can use the heroine or hero's journey as a framework to understand what the soul journey, the soul cycle is all about. I loved this conversation, and I know that you will too. Let me introduce you to Katara. Katara Sky is a dream maker, soul activator, an educator, and intuitive mentor and guide. She's a woman of fire, here to ignite the fire of your dreams, to help you meet your soul and awaken yourself. Her vision is that we all live our individual dreams, embody our sacred place of belonging in the world, and take part in weaving the dreams of the earth. By doing this, generations after us can live in greater connection with themselves, their ancestors, the land, and all their relations. Katara is a soul seeker just like you. She's found a place of belonging by speaking her truths, educating about consciousness and the deep realms of soul and dreams. She says we live in a time where many of us are disconnected from ourselves, disconnected from our inner worlds of soul and dreams, and therefore asleep to our divine purpose or place in the world. Katara is a shamanic being, striving to live in union with all of nature and the cosmos. She comes from the stars and is here to bring the simple message of unconditional love and acceptance. She's a student of life, and she brings to you the perennial wisdom traditions such as shamanism, energy medicine, hypnotherapy, qigong, and yoga. Katara and I have met as sisters on the Four Seasons journey with the School of Shamanic Woodcraft this year, and it has been such a beautiful experience getting to know her and to see parts of myself reflected in her, parts that I love, parts that I think, ooh, what's that about? Katara is a truly magical being, and I'm so excited to share her thoughts, her views, her wisdom, her teachings, and her guidance with you. Happy listening. Welcome, Katara Sky, to Wildflow Podcast. How are you today?
I'm super. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm getting better. Thank you. I'm a little bit croaky still in my voice, but I'm feeling good and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today.
Me
So thank you
too.
for being here. Let's begin with a cycle check-in as always. So inviting you to share if you have a menstrual cycle, where in your cycle you are and how that feels for you today. And if you relate to any other cycles as a snapshot in time as part of your cycle check-in. Um,
Mm.
and so I'll begin. And so for me, I'm on day 6 of my menstrual cycle, and I have finished bleeding, and I can feel a sense of gentle emerging from my winter. Um, I had COVID in my autumn, and I feel like I'm just slowly teetering out of that kind of really slow inwards, needing to properly hibernate energy, and coming into my spring, which feels really nice and just in time
Mm.
with the first quarter moon that we've had as well. So I feel quite aligned in that energy with the moon, which is something that my cycle has been 27 days for a few cycles now. And so it's interesting watching my cycle kind of aligning with the moon slowly.
Yeah.
And now I can really feel, instead of being at these opposites, I can feel quite aligned with that.
Yeah.
And we have spring here too, and we've just had, or having now, Beltane, and that's the peak spring of the year. So I'm not there yet, but all kind of aligned in that same spring kind of quarter of the of all those cycles. So that's me. How about you?
What beautiful reflections. Well, I'm on day 2 of my menstrual cycle. and actually feeling quite connected into my inner realms, feeling really good in my body. I actually do feel that it aligns really beautifully with Beltane that we just had. I think because I was running a little circle,
Mm.
and I always do circles with a little bit of release, like what are we getting rid of before we go into this peak of fertility, and then doing some beautiful ceremony on all the things I'm calling in. So I am definitely at that ready to be in the peak of spring and birthing. So I feel, yeah, quite luscious and, that readiness feel in my body, in my soul, and just feeling good. It feels like winter has been long. Winter has been long, and that germination time, that rooting time, that inwards time has been really deep. And I felt, probably when I was in it, I probably felt this is too long. But then
Mm.
actually, I really feel nourished and just ready to go.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's
Beautiful.
where I'm at.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's really beautiful to hear, and I can feel and really sense your energy in that, and I can feel how luscious it feels for you right now after a long winter. Mm.
Yes, a long term.
Yeah. And it's funny because we've met this year on our Four Seasons journey together that we're both doing with the School of Shamanic Woodcraft. And I remember we had these conversations in our winter season of
Mm.
how long the winter was feeling, and it was for me, and for you too. And so I remember that now, and you've just reminded me of that it did feel like a really long winter. And I think that's why I'm really enjoying spring. It's like, oh,
Yeah, yeah, the
finally
breath
that.
of fresh air, that
Mm.
sun hitting your face, like energetically, but as well as literally being able to see, oh, the sun's finally coming out, spring is finally here, seeing the buds, actually witnessing spring unfold in every way.
Beautiful. Yes. So, Katara, could you tell us a little bit just to get us going? Who is Katara Sky, and what's the work that you do?
Hmm. All right, well, I'm born and raised in Canada. Katara Sky is actually a self initiated name. It's actually a name that I've taken to mean and to symbolize many things, but primarily as a version and expression of who I am today over many cycles and in many deep soul searching work. So, once upon a time, I used to work in corporate. I still am actually a chartered accountant. I used to work for airlines doing things like finance and strategy. And then I guess it's that inner feeling of something's not quite right, something's not quite fulfilled. And thus began that long search for what am I doing here and who am I? And I guess now where I am, because I can't even say I'm at the end of the journey, we're never at the end of the journey. Katara Sky is just where I am right now. And so I find myself now at a time and at a place where I'm deeply working with myself and with others on that level of soul, on
Mm.
that level of dreaming, helping people to connect to their dreams, both at night, but in their everyday lives. What are they dreaming in? What is the dream? And I found that it really takes that connection to soul, to that very inner essence of who we are, and to spirit, to find an even deeper purpose that is more than just our vocation and what we do on a daily level. So I feel that, yeah, I help guide people in that realm of soul and dreams, and so that we can all take our place in the dreams of the earth and what we are dreaming in, like the big web of life that we're all participating in, so that we can all find our place. And that's why I love dream catchers and the idea of weaving, because we are just weaving our energy and our dreams and our lives in and out with one another. So I help people to ignite the fire of their dreams, to connect to their soul, and to find their place in the tapestry of life.
Mm. It's such incredible work. Thank you for sharing that. It's beautiful. I love the way you describe that as connecting with your soul and igniting your dreams and really finding your place. That's beautiful and so powerful, and something that not everybody by far gets to experience. I'd love to just ask you, to when you're talking about connecting with soul, could you give us a definition, or in your words or your sense of what it is you're really referring to when you're referring to soul?
Yeah. I think answering that question has actually been something that I've been asking the whole time. And I think because I grew up without much religion at all, without much spiritual practice at all. And so for me, hearing things like, oh, it's, very soulful or it's spiritual, like I didn't actually know or felt what that meant until I could experience those connections. And so now, I guess for me to be soulful is really connecting, yes, to that heart consciousness, how we feel inside. We can say that that's our true essence. We can say it's a higher self. It's kind of like that inner and true self that really is, it's very mythic. It's very poetic. It's not describing Kat or Charlotte in personality and adjectives. It's it's got a character and a life of its own. And every life, we have different souls. And I feel like our human expression is actually an embodiment of that true essence. So it's something very deep and very inner. And we can actually spend our whole lives possibly without that connection, but then entirely actually being guided by it. So it's something, if I had to visualize where it was or where it is, I feel like it is something very deep inside of ourselves. Whereas I think sometimes when I refer to spirit, it could be more outside, but it's like that part of spirit that's outside that is in you is the soul, if that makes sense.
Brilliant. That's really helpful, because I asked you that because I've been journeying with this question too. And it's like you said, something that I also grew up with no religion. And to me, spirituality, I always thought was religion until I started learning more about it and kind of experiencing my own spirituality, in a few years ago. And I was like, well, I'm not religious, so therefore I'm not spiritual, and had to really discern the difference between the two. And I hear a lot of, people using the word spirit and soul, and sometimes it seems interchangeable as well. And I've really had to kind of work out, what do they mean and what do I mean? And is there a right or a
Yeah.
wrong? And what does it mean for me? And when you're talking about spirit and soul, I we've both read this book this year as part of our journey, a book called Soulcraft by Bill
Yes.
Plotkin.
Mm-hmm.
And that really kind of opened my eyes a little bit for me, because he was explaining it as, spirit is something that, or I got the sense of, I think my memory is right, is that it's like above and beyond kind of thing. And soul is more down and kind of deep connected into the earth. And that, I think, well, that's my interpretation of it anyway. I feel like, yeah, spirit is something that is kind of in the atmosphere or in the ether or above and around us. And soul is something that is deeply connected
Mm-hmm.
down into the lower realms, maybe, or into the earth, and in our, yeah, like when you say inner and deeper,
Yeah.
that's just the sense I have of it. And again, don't know whether it's right or wrong or whatever, but that's been my
It's your
kind of
experience of it
sense of
right
place.
now.
Yeah. So it's really interesting to hear you talking about, what it means to you and how you perceive and visualize that, and
Mm.
what those two things mean to you. And
But they're
yeah,
very connected. They're very connected. And I
yeah,
just want to, say to the audience as well, there's so much out there, and I don't believe in being dogmatic whatsoever,
mm,
just to really see how you relate to that. And I
mm,
truly and firmly believe, what's on the outside is actually inside. So
mm,
while spirit is still out there, it actually still is within us. Even if it's in the trees, in the elements, in Father Sky, those elements are still within us as well.
Mm.
It's that individuation of spirit, because we all come from spirit. Inside us is our soul, but it's still part of spirit, if that makes sense. At least that's how I perceive it right now.
Amazing. That's really helpful to clarify and for me to remember as well that, yeah, as so within, as
Yes.
within, so without,
Mm.
and above and below and all that. So, yeah, beautiful. So, we're talking, on this podcast about cycles, and, you work with soul cycles. So, could you just tell us a bit about what, how we can relate to the soul as its own cycle,
Mm.
and what that can look like for us in terms of, um, you know, finding our soul or our soul essence or soul purpose, or that process. What's the soul cycle to you?
Yeah, great question. I wish I had this podcast to listen to years ago. It might
Same.
have saved some time. Well, in beginning all the cycles work, which I absolutely adore, and it's nature, right, to work in cycles. So I think probably, women would identify with probably their menstrual cycle. Everyone sees, the moon's going around our Earth season, so we see these cycles. On a larger scale, we probably see our life cycle as we move from youth to probably, young adult or full bloom of adulthood, and then move into, being an elder or a wise one. And so if I look at that life cycle and look a little bit deeper on a more spiritual or soulful level, what I have noticed in myself, and probably in many of my clients as well, is that how their journey in their soul actually progresses is not always linear and in line with their life cycles. So we could be in our adult phase in life, but never have actually been initiated into soul. And so I'm going to use that word soul initiation, and that is also still the language of Bill Plotkin, this author that we've referred to, because he does a lot of this work in soul crafts. And, my background is a lot of shamanic work as well, shamanic practices, which all that means is that we believe there's a spirit in all things. In our cosmology, there are unseen realms and our seen realms. And so that is what I've experienced. That as we move through life, many of us can see our life stages, but actually on that inner level, we often can get stuck in adolescence, in childhood even, without truly meeting the soul. And if and when we are not able to do that, we often never get to the fulfillment of our soul purpose, our soul purpose. So one of the cycles I used to use a lot in my teachings, and is a very, very popular and well-known one, is the hero's journey. Do you know the hero's journey a bit? And I love it because we can all see ourselves as the hero and heroine of our journey. I mean, we are. We're the main character in the story of our life. So it's kind of easy if you see it in that way. But then, so what is the quest of our life? What is the mission? And so on a very simplistic level, I can even say that that soul journey, it is the hero's quest. It is the hero's mission on, do you know what the quest is, what your mission here on earth actually is? And so I start with that hero's journey. And so you might remember that in the hero's journey, we, find our guides and our heroes and our helpers. We go through our trials and tribulations. We fight the dragons. We go into the deep abyss and all that. And what I've found very interesting is that in that stage of that deep abyss and transformation is kind of like a very smaller sub-cycle, which is that soul, that descent into the soul. And that descent into the soul is like if you took a magnifying glass into that abyss, it becomes a bigger thing. And you see that that is actually a drop into that descent, dissolution of ego. Who am I? Who everything that you thought you knew about yourself is actually probably not true. You realize the conditioning of your mind. You realize all the things that you ever knew about the universe is probably not true. That dissolution of soul is very characteristic of, probably this phrase that many of us have heard before, dark night of the soul,
Mm.
awakening, big buzzwords. But they're buzzwords for a reason because probably many people experience these symptoms. And what I notice is that on that beautiful slippery slope down into the descent, that's when you descend into that transformation, that metamorphosis. But the thing to be careful of here is actually that sometimes people don't go all the way down.
Mm.
They've slipped into a bit of the, oh yeah, I've had an awakening. I'm now more connected to my soul, or I now know what I should do. And they may have these experiences which actually are a shedding of skin, sure, changing of jobs, changing of relationships, moving across the world. But they don't necessarily encompass that entire chrysalis of change, that entire transformation of really deep diving into that soul journey and coming through the other side in a completely changed way, which is beyond your job, beyond your identity. And so it's kind of like that small section of that descent into soul, right? And so the part that I love working with is the dissolution of the ego, is actually the pulling out of all the thoughts and the conditioning of everything that you think you know, and stripping you down all the way into I know nothing and I am no one, into
Mm.
that phase, and seeing where you emerge, and that's actually a cycle that you can go round and round again. And so I guess as people hear this, you might actually wonder, it's like, well, where am I on that cycle? And you could be back at the top, slipping back down, climbing back up. Our hero's journey is never going to end actually until we take our last breath. And I guess when you look at it on a soul level, that's where you can bring through that idea of, well, how many times have I been doing this? Did I come into this life already with this mission? Did I succeed in a past life? Did I fail? And I guess that brings through some of the woundings and conditionings of the past. That might bring through some of your gifts and the things that you were always intended to do in this life. And so that's why working with that soul is so complex, because it's beyond the job and what you do day to day, but it's what's going on in your inner world. What do you actually hear? Do you know what your hero's quest is? Where are you on that journey? And when I say that, oh, you might not be at the end, does that scare you? And that you're like, oh, I don't even know how far I can go anymore? Are you ready for it? And you're like, oh, I need to go deeper. Does that make sense? And then like the soul journey and how it overlaps with our life cycle, and how we could still be in, adolescent phase and never really meeting ourselves.
Completely. And you've just put so much language to like my process, for one thing, of this I've been I had an experience, probably, well, I've had lots of experiences, but I think the one that really took me into that depth, like you say, that full dissolution, not just that um this is awful, working through, even traumas in the past, but the one that really took me into that place of, okay, I just, what is this actually about? I've been doing this. This is all these things have been happening to me, for me. And I've been trying to bounce back and work through it and keep going and change, in ways that help me move through those experiences. But then there was this point where it was like, okay, this isn't working. I don't seem to be able to have any control over anything. Um, what is this actually about? Like, what do you actually want from me, universe?
Yeah.
Was that real moment. And that was probably about 5 or 6 years ago now. And since then, have been on this journey of trying to work out, like, not put pieces back together, but just like massive re-examining of absolutely everything. And this process of discovering more things about myself, and, like you say, the beliefs that you have about the universe, like everything, being completely questioned, and just finding within that myself, and what I actually want for myself, and what I actually want to do and how I want to live and be and all of those things. And, there have been some times where I've kind of thought, I wonder if I'll ever reach the end of this,
Mm.
or is this just going to be, I've reached that point now of acceptance that this is definitely going to be a lifelong journey. And whether, you reach the finish line on your dying day or you just wherever you're at, like you say, the people never coming into contact with that dissolution and never having that soul initiation. I mean, you can see that around you, can't you? You can see people who, with no judgment, no,
Yeah.
it's not right or wrong, but you can sense the difference when you have a conversation with somebody, I think, as to whether they have met this part of themselves that, or had that dissolution and had that
Mm.
moment of there's something so much bigger and deeper and questioning and seeking versus somebody who might not have reached that point in their journey yet. Do you think that's
Totally.
true?
Absolutely. I find that one of my challenges being an intuitive, being a bit of a seer is I see a lot of people like telling someone you can see their soul can scare people the shit away.
Yeah.
So don't worry, I don't look, okay? But I've noticed that I think I have a little bit of this mirror effect, okay? I'm my role in my human design, which is another completely fascinating map. I'm the karmic mirror. So meaning when people engage with me, sometimes they either can see, oh my God, she can see so much. Tell me, tell me, tell me more. And there are others which is like, oh my goodness, I do not like what I see. And they turn the other way. And then it's Kat's evil. Kat doesn't know what she's talking about. I don't agree with that. And I guess I'm sharing that because it's like everything on the outside is a reflection of inside. So
Mm,
sometimes, you can be shown a lot of truths, but whether or not you're able to accept it is another story. And in meeting and relating with a lot of people, I guess it's really quickly being able to discern where they are in the journey, whether we can even share this stuff easily and have a beautiful and luscious conversation, or that whether you're just somewhere over here and you're talking about the weather and day-to-day things and just leave it at that and being completely okay with it.
hmm
Like even my family, as I said, we never were religious, we were never spiritual. There is a whole part of me that they have no idea about, not because I hide it, but simply because I know that they're not there. They do think I'm a bit weird when I sing to them or when I tell them intuitive messages, but I can't help myself because I'm just going to be who I am and I accept myself. And I've reached these points of realizing, hmm, really being able to take our place in the world is being more than okay to be who we are. It's fully embracing, fully expressing. And if people don't like it, they don't have to be friends with me. So, yes, it's beautiful to have soulful discussions with others. And it has been a challenge and also a learning to be able to meet people where they are and that is all okay because you might have had six past lives, we might have had centuries, we may have been our first life on this earth, who knows? And so we all have our soul contracts on why we meet, who and what you serve for people when you meet them. And so it's important for us to actually just know where we are and what our truths are and meet people where they are. And you never know, you might come back around and be completely different people. I certainly know that I'm a different person if you spoke to me 5 years ago.
mm,
Completely different. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, same, definitely. Yeah. And it's a constant evolution. I feel like, who are you today is the question, isn't it? It's who are you right here and now, because that is not fixed, it is not forever. And as we journey around these cycles, these soul cycles particularly,
Mm.
it's a whole unknown. It's a whole unknown. So would you have any words of maybe advice for somebody who was at this point, this tipping point in their journey of feeling like they are being maybe sucked under or sliding
Into.
downwards into this descent
Yeah.
cycle, as a word of, you know I'm sure it's, it can be extremely scary and to lose control and to surrender to that complete dissolution. But there's obviously such magic and power within that. Is there anything you would say to somebody who was sort of listening and going, oh, I think I'm at that point? What do I
Yeah.
do?
Well, what has been incredibly helpful for me is actually having guides and mentors around. Okay. And I say that in the sense that they don't necessarily have to be paid practitioners. Okay. And if you need one, go get one. But it was also having friends that actually were able to relate and going through that process with them. Oh, I think I'm having a meltdown about, I don't know, my relationship with money. It's making me feel X, Y, and Z. I think it's the patterning of blah, blah, and blah. Like that whole process. And it's been a 3, 4, 5 year dissolution phase. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. It's going to be a lot more than one moment of epiphany. Okay. So, warning, sometimes that dissolution phase really is actually for a long period. You have breakthroughs or breakdowns, you find some stability and plateauing and maybe some integration. And then you might actually find that you're slipping and going down and going into once again. And that's a completely normal thing. But the most incredibly supportive and important thing that kept me sane, kept me going, was actually having people that understood this process in order to share with. And sometimes it was just having that ability to be witnessed, to be heard. They didn't have all the answers. They couldn't necessarily tell me what I was going through. But it's important to share your journey. We're not alone in this. There are literally millions of people who probably go through this journey and these things, and they might call it being able to connect to emotions. They might call it being able to access their deep wounds. They might call it doesn't matter, but we are actually always going through things. And the most important support system is actually having guides, mentors, and people that you can trust and who you can talk to, who are not dream stealers. And I'm going to say that we're dream stealers because we're here trying to uncover our dreaming, trying to uncover our soul purpose. And there's always those people around that says, oh, you're just dreaming, or you're just silly, or they don't get you. And so I'm going to call all of those people and situations as dream stealers. And I'm sorry, but I have no space in my life for dream stealers. And it's really important to see, and dream stealers can be those things, people, places, energies that really suck up your energy. Because as you're going into the descent, you do need energy. You need focus on it, to place your attention, to be conscious of what is actually happening rather than just letting life happen and you're just along for the ride. You are the ride. You are actually going through every motion and everything. So be aware, be conscious. Otherwise, it'll just, toss you around like a wave in the water, and you're going to wake up on the beach and be wondering where you are. So having that support system, finding the guides, identifying who are your dream stealers and who are your dream makers. And that's something, I love calling myself a dream maker because it's inviting people into the dreaming, both in real life. Everything is real to me. And in that altered state, in that subconscious. So important because you are actually trying to get through to what is the dream. That descent is so that you can come through the other side of that dream tunnel and realize why you're here. So really focus on identifying who are the dream stealers and who are the dream makers in your life.
Such good advice. I relate to that so much. I think that's been the difference for me, is having people around me who I can speak freely with and not feel like I'm crazy or I'm going to be called on it, or just people roll their eyes and go like, and it all goes quiet. Like, what's she talking about? Having being heard and witnessed. It's so important, isn't it? We all need that. We all need to be witnessed and to be
Absolutely.
supported in something that is so big and profound. And it's those fundamental changes of, who you are. And like you say, goes beyond all of those surface labels. And it's something that can be quite invisible as well. And people not realizing that you're journeying through this. It can be very isolating and alienating.
Yeah,
Mm, yeah.
definitely.
So you've mentioned before about how, our past lives come into this as well, and how that can place us at different points on our journey. Could you just speak to that a little bit about how how maybe our past lives are part of this greater cycle,
Mm,
or how we might even know if we've had past lives, for example? Is that
yeah,
something I can ask you?
absolutely. I mean, I've always had a fascination with past lives, so I might begin with a very tiny story.
Sure.
When I was studying hypnotherapy, there's this module called past life regression, natal regression. And of course, on some level, I must have believed it because I'm here, taking this course in person. But I remember the first time that I was actually in session, so receiving and actually regressing to a past life. And I was actually watching my mind, actually literally seeing the thoughts go by. Oh, I don't know if this is true. I don't know if I'm actually going to get to a past life. And so it was hilarious because here was my mind. But then, as soon as actually the cues happen and I was there, I can see it. I can experience it. And it was a very visceral body feeling. And I've had that now multiple times. And I could not deny it because I had that personal experience of my personal truth, my personal revelation. And I think that's why I love approaches like hypnotherapy, like shamanism, because it's direct revelation. You experience it. Nobody's telling you in a book. You need to have that experience. And so, in the course of my life now, I mean, I've seen and probably cleared, hundreds of past lives, but even meeting my husband when I was receiving a treatment once again, and it was this visceral remembering of, I know this man, I know his touch, and I can see the imagery come over into my mind of that remembering. And so our soul experience and expression in this life is actually a remembering of past energies, lessons, gifts that we actually are coming into, because everything is in our DNA, everything is within us anyway. So we're activating bits and parts of that. So if you can accept the idea that we have more than one life and that we're not just this body and we are actually a consciousness that might move from one lifetime to another, then that consciousness has memory, that consciousness has information that comes with you. And I feel that probably every life we do have a different purpose, a different lesson that we're learning. I'm definitely learning the lesson of patience in this one. But then we also have the things that flow through that are always the same. For example, if you've always been a teacher, or you've always been an artist, or you've always been, a creator. Like there's so many different things. And these are not titles of our vocation, once again. These are mythic identities that we have. And so how does that feel? How do we even know that we have that? I suppose that sense of knowing is a very good one. Oh, I've always been drawn to loving or liking something. For example, look at these brilliant child musicians. They are just born with such innate gifts. What about some skills where, especially when you're younger, when you see children have them, it just blows your mind away of how gifted they can be. Look at the children's creativity. Where are they flourishing and blossoming? That can actually give you a lot of cues as to what gifts and things they're coming into this life with. Now, the thing with past lives is it also has a lot of conditioning and a lot of
Mm.
patterns. So, for example, I feel like a lot of my past lives have shown me that I need to learn in my relationships. Trusting men. Easy. Relationships. Everyone's got relationship woes, right? And one of my big ones was working with that masculine energy, really being able to trust men in my life. I look at my relationship with my father, still working on it. But I look at my relationship with my husband and all the things that he actually brings up in me, because it's a reminder of all the energies I haven't cleared. And so you look at what's present and going on for you. So let's just say challenges with your relationship. And you can actually start maybe unwinding and picking it back. Now you can pick back to childhood. If you go in the world of psychology or therapy, they probably go back to childhood conditioning, which is true. But I'm just going to take it one step back and say, but even before that, how long have you been running that program? How long has that energy actually been there? Was it in the womb? and something your mother was also experiencing and her relationship with the masculine, or even before that. And so that's where I see past life energy, is that it can very well still be the things that have happened in your current life that influence you now, but actually you can potentially track that energy back to even beyond past lives in which we have felt afraid to speak up, afraid to be feminine, afraid to be living by our cycles, afraid to be speaking our truth and being seen, you know? And you can probably see that, and you work with a lot of women, you would know how many women have the same pattern. So this is our personal conscious and unconscious, but also the collective conscious and unconscious, because these patterns have been there for a long time. It's the feminine rising now, and there's no surprise, right? That balance of the powers between masculine and feminine, and it's not that they're bad, right? But it's just that there are distortions in both of them. What does it mean to be a sensual, powerful, intuitive female? What does it mean to be a powerful, protective, strong masculine? Neither of them are good and bad, they just are. But it's being able to look at where have things been distorted in their energy, how far back they go, and unpicking and unraveling them as they relate to you and how they show up in your life, seeing how it relates to the big story, because everything you clear also clears in the big story. And that's why I say, if we can identify our dream, our purpose, and what we're here to do, then we take part in the greater dreaming and the greater dreams of the earth, and how that can be a better dream for all of us. So we just need to do our work. We just need to focus on what are we here to do, and really trust that that actually does make a difference. Does that answer your question in a roundabout way? My spirit just took me like all different directions. I'm like, where am I going with this?
I love your answer to that question. And I think I have to admit, not so long ago, I was quite skeptical about past lives, but it's like deeply curious as well. And there was this real sense of, I'm not sure I believe in this, but yet my soul knows something that I don't know, or I'm not feeling open or safe to accept as a possibility. And so
Absolutely.
when I've had past life experiences, I've had really clear visions and seeing, and like really, like you said, like it was so visceral, the experience of these lifetimes that I have met and seen myself, and the my mind was very much going, this is just your imagination, this is just your imagination. But yet the strength and clarity of what I was seeing and feeling, and this moment of like connecting dots from this lifetime and these past lifetimes, was very strong, that it just left such it was so clear that I was seeing these past lives and seeing these experiences and these patterns playing out, and being able to go, okay. And as a mirror, it was showing me a mirror of what's at play in this present life that I need to work on. And it's so interesting how my mind was, and it really felt like a right brain thing going, like, this is not true, this is not true. And yet every other part of me was like, this is 100% being shown to you for a reason, and this is part of your reclamation and healing, and doing that, like you said, the big picture work was to see this. So I just wanted to share that, because I think, if someone's listening who's like, not sure about all of that, like, I think it's pretty normal, like in our mainstream, in this culture, it's not particularly widely accepted worldview, and yet it holds so much power and potential to explore these things. And
both of us are saying the same thing, that we were skeptical, right? As we were doing it, it's like, this isn't real. So maybe it's inviting people to be curious, to say, okay, it is not real until it is.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. And so there were things in my experiences that came up where I was a priestess, a ceremonialist, a teacher, a midwife, a healer. And there were dynamics there with the masculine as well. And I've always had physical experiences of neck issues, particularly in the last few years, of real constriction in my throat
Yeah.
and a sense that my neck just needed to be stretched and opened. And in this past life experience, particularly one of them, it was very clear that, I've always felt like a presence of like a witch wound, like to sit, to speak your truth, to be your authentic self. And um, I always thought, people would say to me, well, do you not like fire, for example? And I'm like, no, I love fire. It's like, oh, well, you can't have been burned as a witch in a
Mm.
previous lifetime because if you're comfortable with fire, but I have this very strong sense that, in my past, there was potentially hangings and things like that around being a witch and being working with women, and I can really feel that it's played out in this lifetime of being really afraid of speaking up and being seen and putting myself out there like I am doing right now. So it's been this
Exactly.
real process, but connecting with that past life and understanding from what you've been saying about this soul journey, it's all been bringing me towards reclaiming this part of myself and my power in doing that. And I know that so many other people have this real fear of being seen and being heard and putting themselves out there as well. And it's big work, and it can feel so big because it's for no particular you're not unsafe in this present moment, but there's this
Mm.
residue that can go back.
Absolutely.
So I
Absolutely.
just wanted to share that as being my experience, because I'm sure that people can relate to this sense of having these blocks or problems or fears, but not necessarily understanding in this
Yes.
lived lifetime where it has come from.
That's a great place to start. You asked about, well, what about people have a little bit of a feeling? It's like, well, what do they do with it? Well, that's actually the greatest place to start. Look at where the blocks are. Look
Mm,
at what you're trying to do or get to. And they can actually still be just, normal, ordinary goals. I want to have a better job. I want to get a promotion. I want to get a girlfriend, whatever. And just look at what happens, what's in the way. Look at the kind of feelings and emotions. Do you feel uplifted, vibrant, ecstatic, joyful, blissful? All of these wonderful vibrations. Or are you feeling frustrated, depressive, restricted? Look at the vibration, because everything, even the emotions, are just a frequency and a vibration. Look at what is present. And those are the things that you can go deeper into. Now, of course, you can go deeper on a mind level of, oh, what are my thoughts? Why do I have this pattern? But everything has an energetic pattern. So it's absolutely fundamental to go to the energy of it. Where did this take place? Go find the root of that energy, the first time it happened. Get the revelation, the reason, the teaching of why it's happened. Clear it, remove it, heal it. And only then can it be transformed in your field so that you can move forward. So this is sometimes a place where people might get stuck as well. They feel like it's the same pattern, they keep working on it. So number one, there's definitely layers. It's a spiral journey, as I'm sure that you know. It's an onion peeling one layer at a time. But secondly, it's also being able to do that work at a level that's deep enough. As you and us, we've shared now, cycles, you can look at something very tangible, like our blood cycles, what's going on in the sun and the stars, but then also on that very subtle level in the unseen realms and worlds. And so everything can be looked at in that way as well. We saw the mind, we saw the thought form, we saw the pattern. Now, when you unravel it, you must also unravel down to the most subtle and unseen realms as well. Does that make sense?
makes total sense to me. Yeah, absolutely. These things go so much deeper, and we can trace them back and wind it back, but needing to do that in a way that we can be held in the depth of that and not
Mm.
just staying in these more kind of maybe outward or surface levels. It's
Yeah.
interesting because I always think of cycle wisdom as being like a portal inwards. It's like it can show you on the surface level where things are maybe out of balance or things need addressing, or what's going well and what's maybe not going so well. But then you have to dive inwards into that hole and follow it and follow it and follow it and go into those deeper realms. And that's what I love as well. So interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned that you call yourself a karmic mirror. I would love to talk about karmic cycles. I'm fascinated. I don't know much about this at all. Could you share with us a bit about how this ties in? Like what, because I think you might have heard the word karma as in, karmic retribution or, reincarnation, for example. What do you mean in terms of being this karmic mirror in terms of these soul cycles, and how does that travel through our lifetimes?
Yeah, great question. So firstly, I guess I don't want to focus so much on the fact that, I said I was a karmic mirror. I think I just mean that more in the sense that sometimes when you meet people and you feel something, whether you love them or you hate them, it's because they're showing something back to you. They're mirroring something back to you. So that's all I mean about being a karmic mirror. Sometimes you can have a knowing deep inside that Kat might reflect something I might not want to see. So that's what I mean by that. And about karma, I think, again, there's so many teachings around karma that I'm not going to pretend like I'm a guru on it at all, but I like to share my experience of karma. I do believe that, energy is neither really created or destroyed. It's a transformation that's happening. And so something that you can come in with, it's not, I don't believe that we can just say, oh, that's it. That's in my blueprint. That's in my life. I'm screwed. I don't really believe that. I do feel that, we do have destinies, but we also have free choice. And we can either, for example, go down that descent willingly or kicking and screaming every inch of the way as well. So I think karma is a bit of, these are the opportunities you have in order to balance out, to harmonize the energies that were already in your life. So for example, if you've wronged a loved one in the past, does that mean that you're going to be wronged in this life? I don't think that it's tit for tat exactly like that. It can be. I think there would be an energy that you have wronged someone. That might be, I don't know, guilt, for example. And so you might be coming into this life with that guilt in order to transform it. So because everything is a frequency, it may not exactly play out in the same situation or event, but it will be the frequency of guilt, for example, or wrongdoing that will give you an opportunity to transform that into something else. And I suppose that I would explain even all of karma in that way. Everything is energy, everything is frequency. So if you've done a lot of good in the world, and this is where we have this duality and polarity. Well, if I've done so much good, why do bad things happen to good people then? Well, I suppose for our soul to be whole and complete, perhaps we have experienced all sides of things. Perhaps we need to know darkness in order to appreciate light. Perhaps we do need to have done good and now we need to experience the other side. I mean, that is actually very human as well. And I think as part of existing and living in this plane of existence, it is about learning to love our shadows, to accept them, to heal them, to embrace them, as well as our light side and all the beautiful things that, everyone always shines the light on that. But I feel like, at least in Earth right now, whilst we're still very much in the third dimension, we have to actually realize that not everything is light and love. It isn't. And there's nothing wrong with the shadows, but it's actually acknowledging that we do have shadows and acknowledging that there is a polarity in the third dimension. right? And actually learning our lessons from it, so that we can go deeper, but also to ascend into that place where, that unity consciousness holds it all, right? Look at the yin yang symbol. Yin and yang is actually the whole, but there is the dark and the light and the light and the dark. And that is exactly what the human experience is. So karma perhaps is you were that or you were this, and it's finding that harmony and balance in all our life situations, and that your human incarnation and your soul contracts will allow you the opportunities in order to balance out the energies in your lifetimes. That's a little bit of how I see karma.
Mm-hmm.
Not that something bad happens to you and you say, oh, you deserve it. If you don't learn your lesson, it's going to happen again, unfortunately.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. I love that so much. And I so agree that, I think that we can't just live in this world of lightness and happiness and joy all the time, because it's like with, you know, like you said, you need to have one to appreciate the other. You need the lows to appreciate the highs. And it's like, you need the cold, dark, and, length of winter to appreciate the vibrancy of summer. And I just think that that is, such a teaching about cycle wisdom. It's like all parts are equal and all parts are welcome and valuable and make the whole. And without one part, it doesn't make a cycle.
That's right. And that point, that you're saying, it's a cycle. Like I wear a lot of circular things because it's a symbology of unity and completeness, and that it holds all. Even if we look at a lot of the languaging or concepts out there about spirituality, it's very linear. It's very towards the top. Okay. There's a pyramidal, or even if it's not pyramidal, we even say these words, ascent and descent. It's directional, but actually it's probably more spiral. You go through ups, you go through downs. And even in these frequencies, I don't want to place that love and bliss and joy are above fear and guilt and whatnot. It's actually being able to hold it all. You can have that, but you can also have that. And of course, if we stay in vibrations of love and ecstasy and whatnot, you're not living in that fear. But probably, unless you have really great karma, you have to have experienced those things to appreciate and to really know what it means to maintain that high vibration, right? But let's be real. We're going to have days where things are not always shiny. What are you going to do? Are you less spiritual that day? Are you less evolved? You're not. You're just being very human. And this is the thing, like we can't spiritually bypass and just do all the actions that denote that we're spiritual or ascended in any way. Okay, wear white, burn sage, go to yoga. Like they're lovely things. I've done them all, but sometimes they don't bring us any closer to our soul expressions and what's lurking in there. So it's important to do the shadow work, the dark work, the descent work, the really dirty crawling on the ground. When's this going to end? Winter is long. That kind of work.
Amazing. I so agree. I so feel that. I'm not as interested in the in in staying just in that light. Like it's important to acknowledge and celebrate those joys and those pleasures and that ecstasy and the achievements and the beautiful things, but you have to really be able to look at those darknesses as well, because they have so much teaching in them and so much opportunity, but also just to simply be in it, like you say, with it. Can we just be in it and acknowledge it and accept it, instead of needing to always kind of heal it back into wholeness or kind of take the good out of it. Like we can do that for sure, but sometimes it's just shit. And that's normal. I love what you said there about just being human and not bypassing those moments as well. So much to think about. Thank you so much, Katara. I just loved speaking with you, sharing space with you, and I can't wait to see you soon in actual real life person. For our solo wilderness that we're doing as part of the 4 Seasons journey, which will be coming up. So I can give you a big hug and check in with you there. But Thank you. Is there anything you would love to share about where people can find you and connect with you, or find out more about your work for listeners?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. It's always delightful to talk about cycles. I could go on.
Same.
Yes.
Maybe we'll
Well,
do
you
a
can
part two.
find me. I know, definitely. Just part two. Deeper and deeper into the hole. Everyone can find me on katarasky.com or on my Instagram at I am Katara Sky. And I just want to remind everyone to dream big. And if you don't have a dream, to really sit for a moment and actually contemplate as like, what do I really want? And just start there. I would love to ignite everyone's spark and flame to dream, to make everything alive, to feel that vibrancy and fulfillment. I'm all about vivaciousness and excitement because we should embrace life this way. Life is a beautiful gift to us, and we should always truly, truly be present with that and be grateful. So with that, I'm truly blessed to have shared this space with you as well, and anyone who's listening and just sharing energy with us. And may all our dreams be part of the weaving of the dreams of the earth.
Thank you so much for listening in. If you're loving this podcast and you'd love to help me spread the wisdom shared, please leave a review or rating, or share this with somebody who you think would love to listen in. I'm really passionate about creating ripples of change and getting this information to more women, girls, and people with a cycle so that they can reclaim their cyclic natures too. And if you'd love to dive in deeper with learning more about how to connect with your cycle and rites of passages, come and join our free Wild Flow Circle community, or choose a course and learn with me on my online learning hub. All the links are in the show notes. And until next time, be well and go with the flow of your cyclic nature.